Welcome to Beyond the Work, Tales in Multifamily Maintenance. My name is Chris Caramano. As a 15-plus year veteran in the apartment industry, I have stories to tell, a desire to hear and tell others' stories. As a multiple committee member for NAA, a CAMT advisory board member and a CAMT holder, and a national presenter and educator, I have met and worked with so many great people in our industry at all different levels. This is not going to be a how-to podcast. This is going to be a how did podcast. We are going to explore the how did tales in multifamily maintenance. How did we do it? How did we learn from it? How did we grow? How did we decide not to do it again? Join me as we go beyond the work.
Tami, thank you so much for joining me today on Beyond the Work. I'm so excited to have you here. We've known each other for a number of years now. So why don't you introduce yourself to the audience?
Awesome. It's always great to see you, Chris. So I'm Tami Fossum. I'm the Vice President of Operations. I work for RPM Living. I cover the Eastern United States for our National Affordable Division. So I've never known what exactly genre I wanted to do. So I've gone back and forth with conventional, new development, affordable, back out. So I think the deal structures are cool no matter what. And how do you make it work? So that's why when people always say, what's the difference between conventional and affordable? I say, well, affordable, you got to do the same thing conventional does on half the money. Okay, that's just a matter of the beast. But two is compliance replaces marketing. So
Very
other
true.
than that, it's property management, right? We got to fill units. We got to service residents. We got to keep our teams happy. So it's all the same for me. But I've been in the industry since 1989, which most of your audience might not have been born. So please do not chat that to me later. It hurts my feelings. And, obviously, the thing that I think is great is being involved with NAA and getting to meet people like you, Chris, that we become a connection nationwide. And I don't have to be smart. I just have to know who to call now. Just gotta have a good. I don't have a Rolodex anymore. Yes, I had a Rolodex and business card folders back in the day, but I do just use the iPhone. So, I'm modern.
I remember when I got into the business, I did have business card books. Like I didn't use the Rolodex. I had what you would use for like baseball cards where it had everybody's, an individual page and you were able to sort it. And I'm pretty sure I still have them around here somewhere. They're probably...
mine's in my other office on that side. I'm like, I don't know why it's still there. I'm like, I need to throw that away.
Yeah, but then it gets worse, right? So we're just talking about like old, I'm sure so many people on this call that are listening have old business cards, right? But what about the contacts in our phone that you just have contacts now from when you first got your phone and you don't even, there are names and numbers. I don't even remember them anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, some of them you never change it to their real name. So it's like, not yours is not this way, but it would say, Chris, maintenance guy I met in CAMT. You got to remember why.
I have people like that. So let's get back to, okay, so you started in the multifamily industry in 1989. I won't tell you how old I was. I was alive, but I won't tell you how old I was. But how did you really get into it? I mean, because that's that you have a long storied career in the industry, but did you wake up one morning and say, I want to be work in the industry? Did you fall into it? Are you a unicorn? Do I have a unicorn that
I actually wanted
this is the only career you've ever known?
Yep. I'm one of the few that when I grew up, I wanted to be in property management, but that's kind of true and not true. I grew up in property management. So my father was in the maintenance industry. So was two of my uncles. My aunts, this was back when you had housekeepers. We don't really have those anymore, but two of my aunts were housekeepers. My mom was also, I think she made it to assistant manager on site, and then she ended up moving to the corporate office doing accounts payable, payroll, things like that, after a while of being customer facing, I guess. So I grew up in the industry, so I kind of, honestly, my mom passed away when I was 16. I had to move in with my dad. And so when I moved in with him, I worked at Red Lobster and I couldn't make my curfew because he didn't understand. He was getting this teenage girl and he didn't really know what to do with her, but he knew that he was supposed to give me a curfew. So he was like, your curfew's 10. And I'm like, Dad, you, I can't even get home from work. He's like, you're going to have to quit your job. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I quit the job and I got a job at the pool for the summer, managing the city pool. Now, how I did that at 16, I don't know that either. But I managed the city pool and all the lifeguards. And then it was a summer job, and then I was out of work, right? So my dad came home one day and he said, hey, I was talking to one of the managers at a meeting. He worked for, I think, Johnstown Property at the time. And he said, they're looking for a part-time leasing agent to work afternoons and weekends. And you'll be home by your curfew because they close at 6. So I was still in high school when I started. So that makes me not as old as I sound when I say 1989. So I started at 16 when I was a senior in high school. They did let me off for prom. That was the only Friday afternoon and Saturday I got off, but for prom. So for me, I thought it was, I'm going to be honest, I did, Chris, think it was glamorous. I didn't want to go in maintenance because my dad did make me work the summer with him when I was younger. And I was like, that's hard and sweaty. And I was like, mm-mm. But the girls in the office looked pretty. They had a pretty office and they always were nice to me and gave me treats. So I thought that's what their job was, that I just, as a resident, came in and they just entertained me and, told me my dad was great and all that stuff. I was in for a little bit of surprise my first day at leasing. And it's funny, I got hired, it was Johnstown, it actually changed to, I think, shelter management even before I started the property. They were like, oh, by the way, you're still hired, but it's no longer Johnstown, it's shelter. And I was like, oh, okay. I guess that's how this industry works too. You just, you might work for somebody else the next day, which is fine. As
Yeah,
long as you got a job.
that happens. I work in the fee managed environment now, and sometimes I'm the person delivering that message. Like, hey, you know who you worked for yesterday? You don't work for them today.
Yes, we're starting a new game in town. So,
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what are you doing now? You said you work. You're regional vice president for RPM Living.
Yep, I'm their vice
Correct?
president of operations. So,
Vice
so
president
I
of
oversee
operations.
the regional VPs report to me, and then the regionals report to the regional VPs, so on and so forth. So I report to the senior VP, which does all of the national affordables. So a little bit different. Some of our divisions in RPM are not. They are very regional centric, and they have a leader. They're not national. Affordable we do as a national platform. So we, um, because I think we're at like 20 something thousand units that are strictly affordable, versus the 180,000 or whatever that we're over now. So, for me, it's, a little lot more client relations. We also have been trying to grow our affordable fee management business. So as you said, when you're in fee management, you're, doing your client presentations and, more client relations and then your team environment. Now I'm a little bit more unique. I have to have a connection all the way down. So I host each month a community manager exchange, which is all the managers that are in my territory. We talk about what's going on. We see if they have do they need a resource? My personal vision for my territory is to be a leader that gives them the resources they need to do their job, and that if everything in my power. So if I can't hear their voice, I don't think I can provide right resources, because then we're playing telephone. I'm getting information always, from somebody else who's getting it from somebody else. So we have an open hour each month where all the community managers are invited. They don't get in trouble if they don't attend. It's recorded that they can listen to it. I have that with my regionals and my RVPs, and then I have one with my RVPs. And then 3 months ago, I started a coffee talk, and it's for everyone. So maintenance, anything that I'm on for, that a 30-minute segment of, is there something that's missing? Tell me about it. It's casual. If there's something that we'll host that they know, like if they send me in advance, like we really want to low and affordable. One of the maintenance guys was like, I don't understand this, and this. Can you tell me why? And I said, you know what? I will make that the coffee talk. Tell all, here. So we did a thing. This is what we're going to talk about. So a lot of the maintenance guys joined because they would hear utility allowance. They're like, what does that mean? Or, we're having an MOR, What is that? A Mo, a more what? An Inspire, which you did a great session on the Inspire. That used to be React, but somebody hasn't heard that it's changed. And it's like, why is is Inspire same as React? So, one of them had sent that. So I did that, all the acronyms of affordable for them, and they were like, oh, so that's what all these things that they would hear in the office, what does it mean? Like, why do they have to do certain things? So I try to do that too. So I'm since I started as a leasing person, and I guess because I was raised by, three men in my life that were in the maintenance field, I was like, I need to connect on that level. And I do think as the industry, maintenance is suffering in engaging and feeling connected to anybody other than their team on site. We still see in that it's been since the office against maintenance, and I'm like, this is a team. There is no office against maintenance, um, and there shouldn't be. And I always tell them, this is my number one tip, Chris. Do not tell the maintenance guy the weather outside. They are fully aware if it's hot or cold because they want to hurt you. That's what my dad used to tell me. When you come to the office and the office says, God, it's hot out there, you literally want to slap the person that says that. So that's always my thing. Please don't say it. I don't want anybody to get slapped.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I have been on the receiving end of that question more times than I can count. As recently as yesterday, when I was outside working in 100-degree weather and walked into the office that was a very comfortable 68 degrees. And the team in the office was complaining about how hot it was outside. Meanwhile, I'm severely dehydrated looking for the closest water cooler to fill up,
Yeah.
especially
Well,
this
that's our
time of
public
year.
announcement. Now quit saying it. They
Yeah,
know.
please quit saying it. No, I love the idea of the coffee talks. I mean, I do something, very similar. And I think my success, my personal success came from being inquisitive. And I have found that a lot of maintenance professionals, while they're inquisitive, they might not necessarily, maybe it's a little bit of pride of, um, you know, in their job or just the kind of, how some maintenance professionals are built, the ones that I've worked with at least, they don't want to ask what is a utility allowance, like, because they don't want to have somebody respond back to them like, oh my God, you didn't know, how can you not know what that is? Right.
Right. Right.
Um, so, I love the idea that you have inquisitive maintenance professionals that are asking you, whether it's just one, because maybe one is asking the question for 50 and you're able to get that information out to more people. I'm a big advocate. I wouldn't have learned half the things I knew about in this industry if I didn't sit in the office drinking that water and getting a cool down and listening to what was going on and asking those questions. I came into the affordable housing industry blind 10 years ago. I came from luxury. So Inspire didn't exist, but MORs and utility allowances, reacts, those things didn't, LITEC, all of the acronyms that we have in our space, there's acronyms in conventional and luxury, market rate, all those as well, student housing. But we have a different language. And the only way that I learned it was to keep asking. I still do. I still ask questions. I try not to pretend I know something. And I think that's really important that a lot of people just do. They just hear it and pretend like they know what it is, but never really know what it
Yeah, and
is.
then they go and Google it, use AI, but they don't realize AI is pulling all this data, trying to give you an answer. That's what this is. I always tell people, but did you click on the link to see? I'm not getting religious by any means, but I said, we all know somebody can take a verse in the Bible and turn it into something that we never thought it could be. So AI is taking all these snippets and saying, okay, this is how we're culling the data for you. Here's an answer. But there's those little links. So in affordable, I'm always like, you got to click that link because it's going to open up and give you that building block to kind of understand the why of how it's connecting. Because we all know sometimes we Google something and my daughter did say, how was it when you just had to not know? I was like, whoever had the biggest voice won and convincing story. I did go many years thinking that pineapple pickers did not have fingerprints because it was discussed at one night at dinner, and that person was very convincing and I just believed it. And then years later, I remember thinking, I wonder if that's true. From the acids on the pineapple and years, 20 years. And I'm like, okay, it's not true. So I did walk around a long time thinking that, because we didn't have any access like we do now. So it's great. But we can't just go with that first snippet of what we hear about affordable. We got to dig a little bit deeper as
Yeah,
well.
and I think that goes for education in general. I mean, you bring up a really good point. I came from a generation as well where, if somebody sounded really convincing, that was the answer that you went with, right? A common myth that is always perpetrated, and I'll get a bunch of comments after this, is that an air conditioning system, will not cool an interior space more than 20 degrees of the outside temperature. I've heard it my entire career. I know I could actually name the people who are going to write comments in this when this comes out. Um, but I for years I believed it, and for
My
years I
dad
was like,
died
well,
believing that.
yeah. And I've made residents believe it. I'm not going to lie. I've said it myself, but
Yeah.
once you do a little bit more research and you have the tools and the knowledge, and goes, oh, that's a fallacy. That is a myth that has been perpetrated by many, many people inside and outside of our industry, whether it was our supplier partners or people inside the industry that had perpetuated that. But that knowledge is power. I find it with my 16-year-old daughter at home, stuff that I am still at 46 years old, I am convinced is the truth, is absolute 100% fact. She has no problem tearing me down in about 30 seconds with a Google search. She has no, she has this, her generation has a confidence that I can only imagine if I had that level of confidence 30 years ago, where I would be today. But that's a wonderful thing. And it is something that we have to be mindful of in our education of the next generation. This is going to my next topic because I love a good segue. You and I met probably about 7 years ago when we were doing a CAMT rewrite. We were in the room, I think, together, working on questions and going through the CAMT manual. I know you're very involved in education on various levels, both inside your organization as well as with the National Apartment Association Education Institute. But talk to me a little bit, where does that passion for education come from? And what are you currently seeing with this in our industry currently? And we'll start there.
I think one thing we're going to have to change the way we do things, because it is a different generation. Like we talked about your daughter and how they have access to information. Also, distraction levels are different. Than they were. There's my right now my Apple Watch is going off, my phone's going off, emails going off on this screen. I got a screen over here, something flashing up on. So being in the moment is very hard for this new generation. And we have to figure out how to get them there so they can be in the moment because they've been doing this their whole lives. And we know the school system is even struggling with that because, they're like, what do we do with these phones? And the parents are wanting the kids to have the phones because active shooter. I mean, there's so many things that are going on that's making this perfect storm of learning is no longer a singular focus. I'm sitting here, I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to answer these questions, right? And we also have so many tools that are at our disposals, whether that's, I don't know how to do math because we all have had calculators, right? I'm not that old. But, even basic math on a calculator, your staff doesn't know that because they've always used Excel or the system, the property management system is calculating it. So yeah, they don't know how to do the math, hard schooled, but they know the information and they may know the why or how it's done. But there's not a need to memorize anymore, something that you can look up. So I think that's a shift that we are so used to having to you're supposed to know it, right? Now maintenance, I think you might have, even that's going a little further. We used to say, oh, maintenance just has to know it. They have to do hands on. But how many guys are taking their phone and YouTube and stuff? Um, my brother is always YouTubing stuff. He just did his fuel injector in his truck. And I was like, that is making me nervous. I've heard things like it can explode, it blah, 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 blah. And he's just like, it'll be fine. I'm just doing it in your front yard. Okay, it's just take up a house. But that he's 36. I'm 53 this year, not yet, but going to be. So just that divide that I'm like, oh, you're that confident because you watched it on YouTube, where I think I need hours being poured into me to know how to do something because that's how I was taught, hours of pouring into me. And then I would know, and I only answer when I know because I'm a female. So when I was growing up, females didn't talk until we knew the answer because the boys were always talking and the teacher was yelling at them. They were yelling out answers and the teacher would be like, stop talking, be like the girl. So we were like, I'm not saying nothing until I know the answer's right. And then I'm going to speak up. So we're overcoming those things. Then you have this new generation that I don't need to know it. I can look it up. Why do I need to retain it? I may need to know it for a test. I may need to know it for that. But in my job, I'm going to look it up, so we are going to have to kind of adjust to that. And also just the people, I was having a client call about some of our site humans, and they were saying, well, I expected a little bit more out of somebody who has 10 years worth of experience. 10 years worth of experience has not experienced multifamily in a downturn. So they don't have that experience. They've lived in when we were high on the hog, right? And so they don't know about concession wars or adjustable rate mortgage impacts or tax, things that are impacting our industry that are causing chaos, right? And distress, and stress levels are increased. You and I might have already lived through a cycle like that, 2008, early 2000s, the 90 recession for me. I lived through those things. So I know, okay, this will pass. We'll reshift. We'll figure it out. We'll cut the fat and we'll get back to good times. And then we'll add some more fat and layers. It's any business and we're not any different. We love to say we're so different than any other industry. We're not. When I talk to my friends that are even in pharmaceuticals, which is supposed to be high on the hog, they're like, yeah, we're having layoffs and, blah, 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 blah. They're going through the same thing because people can't afford it. So it's sad. They may be going without, but they're not selling as much either because of that and all the insurance cuts. So for me, I think we're going to have to change as the leaders who want to train and want to get our future workforce there. We're going to have to do it differently. And how we are going to, not to segue again, but then how are we going to get this maintenance talent that we already have a shortage on? So we're fighting over the same team members at this point to have maintenance. And it's like, how are we going to cultivate this talent? What are we going to do different as an industry to get the humans that they're still out there. My son's in construction, so he did not go to college. Heck, he didn't finish high school. He was like, this is not for me. And he's done fine. It was terrifying as a parent, but he's already bought his home. He's married. It's great, but he learns differently. He is different. And when we take these people that are like that and we force them to go into things that's not made for them, and sometimes then it's hard for them to go back because they lose that skill. And think about you right now, Chris. Do you feel like I know I've lost some skills based on the analytical, like I used to be a hugely creative type person, but as I grew in my career and I took over more that analytical and analyzing and being a leader and cultivating people, I've lost that like artsy type person that I was. It's just like, I don't use it, I lose it. And I'm assuming that happens in the maintenance.
Yeah, it happens. It's definitely happened to me, and it happens to, I think, a lot of maintenance professionals, especially when we get into, more advanced roles. Much like on the operations side, right? Is that as you become a maintenance supervisor, you may be doing tasks that you may be building a certain skill set, like being able to do budgeting or supply ordering or just coming up with scopes of work and solutions, but you might forget how to properly solder a joint. Like it just might be something that just falls out of your brain as you learn something else. But then we have another piece with with maintenance professionals specifically is technology, right? The technology of a refrigerator just 10 years ago is completely different than it is now. Now, while the base idea of a refrigerator has never changed, as you add electronic components and computer boards to appliances, that's a different skill set. And that takes another level of learning. So for me, I used to be great with a certain type and model of being able to troubleshoot dishwashers and appliances. If you had asked me to go in today, I would probably struggle. While some of the base knowledge is still there, they have now surpassed my knowledge. So it's hard for me to train on
Yeah.
something that I personally don't know how to use. I do want to go back to the YouTube generation, if you will, because I came up through that. I'm not going to lie, I learned a lot from YouTube, and I learned, as we were talking about a little bit earlier, you got to know where you're getting your information from. Sometimes the video that has the most likes is not telling you the best, safest way to do things.
Correct. Safety first.
Yeah, it's not just safe, but that guy knows only that person delivering that YouTube video content. And I use YouTube because a lot of us use it, and there's you can just plug in your model for your car and say, how do I change my spark plugs? You're going to have 50 different videos from 50 different people, all telling you how to do the exact same thing, replace your spark plugs, but they're all going to tell you how to do it differently. That's where I get worried when I see training videos on YouTube, right? Because you have to curate the content. One of the things that we like to do, because of how we create courses like CAMT and CAM and CAPS, and that is a brain trust. It's a lot of subject matter experts from various generations, parts of the country, and much different levels of experience. But a YouTube is a guy with a video. And I know it's hard for me to say here as I'm sitting here on a podcast telling people to get off YouTube from watching training content. And maybe that's my takeaway from this episode. But I'm not teaching anybody how to, tear down a pump and check if its internal components are working properly and put it back together, right?
Yeah, 'cause
There
once
is
you
a
tear
lot
it up, you
to,
can't return it.
yeah, once you
Warranties
tear it
and
up, you can't return it.
yeah, I've had somebody try to do something on a site where the new system ended up getting damaged because he didn't have the skill set. And I said to him, I would have been better off for you just to say, I don't really know how to do this. Is there any way someone could come and help me? And I always told when we call someone out, hover, watch them. That's the best way to learn. You have the expert there. That's when you should learn. It's fine if we're going to call appliance repair guy out because you have this new refrigerator with some type of electronic component, but then go with them so that you can learn. Okay, that's what he did. Now I know how to do it. Let him break it because then we can ask him to replace it, him or her. But it is true because if you get that wrong, it's definitely you're going to cost your property more money, and overall that all goes into the rents, which impact your resident. And I always tell people, it's not, if it really was your money, would you do it? And I'm not really talking about from the owner's end. I'm talking about from the renter's end, because that no matter what, we're going to put that into the rent. That's just, it has to, because that's the offset. So when taxes go up and trash goes up and, labor costs go up, that all goes into the rent. So we did have a rash of, when the times were good, I'd say we hired a bunch of replace people versus repair people. And we were replacing everything, not repairing anything. And now we're back in that time where we have to watch these expenses, and the reserve funds have already been depleted to their minimum balances. So now you're going to have to be repair people. We can't just replace everything. And, also just a little step further is, do you even know your owner's objectives? I've worked for owners that hold assets from the time they build it to the time they die. And that's, 30 something year asset hold. What faucet I put in that versus a 2-year flip is different, right? So it's not, you want it to last while you're holding that, because if you're replacing a faucet every 2 years and you're a 15-year-old person, that is going to impact your returns versus let's just get the right one now that's going to have the parts that last during this longevity of a hold. So sometimes I don't think that we share that with our maintenance staff that, hey, yep, it's okay to use this part for here, but for this property you're going to need, this is a long-term hold. This is somebody's legacy hold. I mean, I've had a client one time that says, I'm building to die and leave this to my children. I'm like, okay, well, that's a different strategy. That's a different strategy.
Yeah. And there is a different, sometimes, there is, especially in our world, but, it is more beneficial to replace something, whether it's, it's an appliance or a fixture, than it is to repair it, right? Depending on a lot of variables, age.
A microwave door. What's up with it? Why is the door so expensive? You just get a new microwave.
It's cheap, right? And in some cases, right, there's that logic too. But I'm just saying, in general, some owners might see like, hey, these refrigerators are all 15 years old. I just bought the property. I have the money to give all of the residents brand new refrigerators as part of a rehab or, as, new move-ins. So that makes sense, right? And then there's other, properties and ownerships that aren't able to necessarily do that. But when you were talking about repair and replace, I think that, going back to a couple of previous things we talked about, let's talk about the YouTube, right? Whenever I open up a YouTube and they're like, if you're having this problem, all you need to do is replace this part. They're left out a key piece. How did you get from this doesn't work to you're going to replace a part? There's a huge gap there, and it's called troubleshooting, right? This is the problem. Somebody has now said, it's Tami, if I was to tell you I had a pain in the back of my neck and you instantly diagnosed me as slipping a disc, that makes no sense. You don't know you're not a doctor, and B, we are on a call, right? But this is what we're seeing. Unfortunately, with the YouTube generation is, this is the problem. And a guy says, well, if this is the problem, this is how you fix it. And that's the piece in the education that we are missing. And I loved what you were.
A sports analogy on that, Chris, is my ex-husband. We were married 30 years. We're very amicable. He and I were doing something together, and I had to watch his dog. And he was telling me the kids, he coaches football, high school football. And he said the kids don't know a football play. They've never watched a full game. They've only watched TikTok or YouTube snippets. So they don't know how the person got here. They just know you throw the ball, the person's there, and they go. And that's how you play football. And he's like, no, this line has to, and he's got, the X's and O's, and they're looking at him like, they don't even know there's anybody else on the field other than the thrower and the catcher. But that's why we have to be, he has to change his style, because these kids, they don't look at the line and they don't look at what happened to get through that gap to get there and how this guy blocked these people so this person could do it. They really honestly think it's a singular sport. And he was like, no. So they had to go all the way back and say, okay, y'all don't know how this works. COVID babies. That's what he calls them. Hey, COVID babies. You are only seeing snippets of life, and so
and that's what we're seeing in the maintenance industry is they've only seen snippets, right? They see a video that they searched for, or a video that showed up on their feed. On my LinkedIn, on my Facebook, on my TikTok, I get these cool little maintenance repair videos, and I know that I'm only seeing part of it, right? When you see those hacks, why are they doing that? They don't give you the lead up, right? They don't give you that part. And I think that's what we have to be careful with is, Mike, when we talk about teaching and education is being careful of the micro learning, because we have to meet people where they are, and they want it in small bite-sized pieces, right? Uh, Nobody likes to sit in a classroom for 8 hours anymore. It's not, we do it, but it's not how they learned in high school. It's definitely not how they learned in secondary education. If they, either went to a trade school or they went to, college. Um, but then we ask them to sit in a class for 4 to 6 hours
Yeah.
or even longer to learn something when they have never done that since maybe elementary school was probably the last time most people spend a full 8 hours in a room with one teacher.
Right. Yeah.
Once they
One
turn
one
12,
talking head.
13, and they go into middle and junior high school, they're changing classes every 60 to 90 minutes and they have multiple teachers throughout their day. But then they get into the professional world, and then what do? Hey guys, we're going to have an all-day training, and here is your trainer for the day or your teacher for the
Yeah.
day, Miss Tami Folsom.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, I haven't done this since I was 12, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you're
So
like,
we
I'm
have to meet people
sitting
where
there
they want to
falling
be there.
asleep because you're like, I'm not even used to sitting without being engaged in all these other things. Yeah. So yeah, we're gonna have to really look at that. But you're right, you can't miss that troubleshooting piece because, and maybe it's that building blocks to get to here, you get to there. I just did a leadership thing where you couldn't go skip modules. You had to go through this and test out before you could go to that. And, that way they knew you understood the whole process before you got to the end.
I think that's some of the benefits that I've seen of the. I don't know how much experience you've had with some of the virtual maintenance training products out there. And I'm not publicizing or promoting any one of them. There's plenty of them out there, and they're all excellent. But it's consistent because it is small micro learning. It is you have to build. You have to do step A before step B unlocks. It's not like if I was to teach somebody how to do something, I might skip a step just because that's how my brain goes. But virtual systems and online computer based systems, no, you have to do A, then you can go to B. Whereas if I'm teaching you, I might accidentally skip B. Or as we were talking about the YouTube, I might just make an assumption that you know B. So I'm not going to discuss it with you, or I'm not going to teach you it, or I'm not going to go over it.
Yeah. I mean, we do that
Are you
even
seeing
with our
something
office
similar?
folks. Yeah. Yeah. And I have, and I agree with you. I think that if you have that builds on it and those building blocks, because I even know when we train our office staff, we still do the same thing. Like I've been doing it so long, I'm just like, oh, you pull this number, and they're like, you know, uh, where, what, and then oh wait, I did miss this, or it's we got to go back here, and I'm sorry, I forgot to show you this piece, because I just know what I'm going to put there. So yeah, it is true that we're all human and we do that. So these systems that stop us from doing that are good. Just like mine was all virtual, this leadership thing, and it was like, nope, you're not getting past that until you've comprehended and you can show you comprehended before you.
Yeah. I don't want any of my listeners, or I think I've already angered enough people today. So as we start to wrap up, I am all for in-person education. I am an educator, Tami, as you are. But we go through a lot of processes to make sure that we are properly walking our students through a problem from point A to the end, to point Z, not missing a step. I'm specifically talking about the people who aren't true educators that are following a process or a book. Specifically, call it the YouTube generation, call it, training videos that are out there where it's just somebody in a camera is where I get concerned for, especially our maintenance professionals, because that's when steps get missed, things get broken, and safety is not always paramount. You have to curate your YouTube content much like you would curate your Netflix or your Hulu or your Disney Plus account, right?
Right,
You want
right.
to favorite certain people. You want to, curate where you're getting your learning from, and not just the first search that comes up and click start, if that
And
makes any
sometimes that's
sense.
entertainment value. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
what's the most entertaining, not the most. accurate.
Informational. Well, this is a road that I did not think that we were going to go down today. But that's what I love. That's what I love about having interesting, fun guests like yourself on, Tami. And this is why I do this is to get different perspectives and have these conversations that go really just beyond what we do on a regular basis. Because it is beyond, right? We all have jobs, we have 9-to-5s, but this is really looking past and to make our team members better, our industry better, and I'm glad I'm able to have this conversation with you today.
Well, I thank you for inviting me. It's been my pleasure.
So Tami, thank you so much for joining me today on Beyond the Work. And I look forward to seeing you again soon, and maybe right here back on the show, and we can talk a little bit more about something else that sparks our fancy. So thank you all for joining Tami and I today for another episode of Beyond the Work, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you for joining me for this episode. No matter how long you've been in our industry or what position you have at your company or your community, everyone has a maintenance story to tell. Go to www.multifamilymedianetwork.com and leave me a voice message or share your information, and we can tell your tale together on a future episode. Please check out our sponsors and like, subscribe, and follow to this podcast or video, and join the Multifamily Media News Network newsletter for upcoming shows and blogs from me and the other great hosts on our network. Our stories all connect us. See you for the next chapter.